Hello, and we're live. Hi. No intro, so we're just like, ta-da! Here we are.
It's the
Hi.
Marilyn Honig Show. Yeah.
Oh, so okay, I have to have you make me one.
There you go.
So we have the incredible Dylan, aka Blow Drill. Love that name. Hi
Thank
there.
you.
Welcome, welcome. Yeah, so here we are. Um, we've been trying to get to do this for a few weeks now. I'm glad
Yep.
we're finally getting, our schedules coordinated. And so much has happened. I mean, we were going to talk about some, you know, kind of nitty gritty, I don't know, doctrine, things about Scientology and kind of
Right.
do a deep dive into some of that. But um, I like to do things that are timely. And I thought, wow, you've been around for so long. You're in the chats. You are well liked. You're well respected. So I thought, why not just do a Q&A and the community can kind of, pick your brain a little bit because you have been around and know so much of
Uh,
the ins and outs of the community and the Scientology itself. You escaped, you blew from Scientology. And I thought maybe we could start with just the capsule version of who you are. I'm sure, 99% of people watching know who you are. But if you want to give us a little capsule version of your story, and we can go from there.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it. Um, and I guess thanks everybody in the chat. I see a bunch of people there. Joel from Colorado. I'm also in Colorado. It's actually
Hey,
cold where I am right now,
Joel.
but we are in a heat wave kind of. So we'll see how that goes.
We are too in
Um,
Vermont. Oh.
yeah, I bet there's a huge storm coming your way, right?
Yeah, I'm not sure when it's gonna land. Duncan watches that. He loves snowstorms. Loves it.
Yeah, no, that one looks pretty intense. It might be
Yeah,
fast
we
moving,
got
but
it. We got what he called a dusting yesterday. It was like 2 or 3 inches is a dusting. I'm like, "To me, that's not a dusting."
that's a decent amount of
Yeah.
snow for sure.
Yeah, I think so.
Um, well, so my story, I think I overcomplicate it, but my grandfather was in Dianetics and part of that whole thing in the San Francisco Bay Area in like the 60s. And then my father and uncle and his two daughters, both my aunts, dabbled in it. When I was born, my dad lived in San Francisco. So he was in and out. He was a musician, played a bunch with like Chick Corea and, Grateful Dead when they were just starting out. Had a couple bands in the Bay Area. And we were in and out of the Mission Network, which is the lowest, like the intro level of Scientology. It's like all the little homegrown missions. So we were in like Santa Cruz Mission, Concord, all those kind of areas. So I kind of grew up. My aunt was a course supervisor, so I'd help out in the course room a lot as a kid and do TRs and self analysis or book one auditing and all the basic stuff. Go sell book one, go sell like Dianetics books door to door, and that kind of stuff. So to me, that was sort of normalized as a child. With my dad also being an artist, we'd take off and travel and then come back and make that kind of our home base, so to speak. So I guess at that point I was getting to be like 10, 11 years old. Um, and my dad and uncle decided to join the Sea Org, and they found out that there was the amnesty for the LSD was not in play at that time. So they weren't not eligible to join the Sea Org. And as any good Sea Org recruiter would do, they find the next closest target, which happened to be me. So um, at the time, it was probably, I was pretty into it. Like it was a pretty cool time, I guess, in Scientology. There were still a lot of leftover people from the 70s and that kind of
And
stuff.
how
So
old were you? How old were you at this point?
the first time was like 11. So I got recruited to join the Sea Org, but I was obviously too young. So they put you on what's called a Project Prepare. And that means basically like, okay, you basically need to age and then keep doing Scientology and keep doing this. And that was kind of the plan. So every year when they would come back, recruiting missions would come back, I would be on their list, and they would kind of check on me and make sure I'm still kind of doing courses or doing, they had me kind of do like student hat and a few courses like that that would help me when I got to the Sea Org kind of thing. So when I turned 14, it was actually my dad that kind of initiated it, and he brought me into the mission. I'd been skipping. I was doing what's called the upper indoctrination TRs.
I'm
Um,
sorry, just the word indoctrination, like,
I know, right? They
wow.
even use it blatantly.
I
So,
know.
and those are TRs to like control bodies and to control and use, like command intention, or like use tone 40 intention, like absolute.
Is
So
that
you're
like
basically,
the
go ahead.
8C thing or whatever, where they're
8C
what is
is,
it?
yeah, that is
8C moving
that's
you?
actually physical handling, where you actually put your hands on a person and you body route them. And that's usually primarily for people that are inebriated or anything like that. Um, or at least that's their party line. Obviously it's meant
Right.
to indoctrinate you. So,
Yeah.
the things you learn after you leave, weird, right? Um, and then I was starting to, I mean, talking to an ashtray or yelling at an ashtray and using this intention with your mind. As a kid, I was kind of more interested in like skateboarding and doing stuff like that. So,
So
my
weird,
dad would
right?
drop me off at, I know, right? It was at the time. It was actually a big ethics problem. But my dad would drop me off at the mission, and I would sometimes just not go into the mission and skateboard down the street and hang out with my friends. And we weren't even doing anything wrong. We were just skateboarding. Like, we didn't do any drugs. We didn't drink. Like, we were, 14, 13 years old. So, my dad found out about this, and it was a big problem. So his solution, I can't believe I'm saying this. Um, his solution was that I needed to go to the Sea Org, and he wanted me to route directly to the RPF because I was so out ethics. And at the time, so it's quite interesting. I was trying to talk to Natalie Webster because she seemed to know about the Sea Org or the RPF prior to joining the Sea Org. And although I had been completely in Scientology my whole life, I really didn't know what the Rehabilitation Project Force was. I didn't know that there was a DEX Project Force. I didn't know that there was what the Estates Project Force was. I didn't know what any of that was, but I knew it was bad. It was all ethics, and it was a way to handle me and that kind of thing. So my dad and the mission ED, who's like the executive director, I know, right? How dare I? Was they made it seem like this big huge thing, right? Like it was this big huge, like, you are completely ethics bait, you're like an ethics particle, and when the recruiter showed up, it was a lady, I don't know what her non-maiden name, it was Ricky. She ended up marrying a guy named Galbriati, so it was Ricky Galbriati, but I believe her name was something else prior, I'm not sure. And a lady named Jan Carter, and they showed up. And my dad was like, he's the out ethics and this and that. And they were like, oh, we can just do this repair of past ethics conditions. And you do a little write up. It's like doing ethics conditions for a past transgression, basically. Um, so we did that. And then it was like, okay, you can join the Sea Org. I was like, what? And my dad mentioned the RPF, and they were like, well, no, he would go to the EPF first and then, do that. Um, So pretty much, I think it was about a day to 2 days later, my dad bought me a one-way ticket to Florida, and I'd never been on a plane before, um, and the one-way ticket didn't really hit me till I got there. Like, there was no chance of returning. It was kind of like that was it. And even the billion years didn't really register because it was almost like a symbol is how it was sold, right? So when you're young, it's like,
Yeah.
oh, right, of course I'm going to pledge my life to, it's like how other religions get people to, like the missionaries and Mormons and those kind of things. So
Now,
um
were you pulled out of school? Were you going to public school at that point?
I was and wasn't. My dad was traveling artist. So I was
Oh,
homeschooled
right.
for a long time.
Okay. Yep.
And he basically I homeschooled myself. A lot of times my dad just told me to do the teacher part, read the teacher part, and then do the student part. So basically I had all the answers but at that time you actually had to send it in. So it
Mhm.
was a really, I don't know, it was a very odd, even as a child, I remember thinking this wasn't quite right. Um, it basically taught me how to like cheat, you know? And I was like, so it was kind of weird.
Uh-huh.
Um, yeah, my father's upbringing, I can at some point for sure.
I'll
He's,
star it. We can go back to
yeah.
that if you want. I got it
Um,
starred.
Either way, so I was sent to Florida and I was recruited for an organization called Flag Crew, which is the estates organization in Florida. And when I got there, it was, it's just a completely crazy different world than being at a mission in a course room with people that like really want to be there and seem to be enjoying each other's company. And, this organic kind of grassroots movement is what I kind of felt um, going to Florida and becoming, 120 hours a week. When we were in the EPF, we didn't work that much, but we trained. Basically, what we did was clean all the hotel rooms in the sandcastle for all the upper level OTs. And then we would do renovations and then we would do study. And until you finished your basic like staff statuses and all the basic EPF courses, you weren't allowed to graduate. So um, once I graduated from the EPF, I was sent to like a management org in that area, and then yeah, that's kind of how I think. Does that answer your question a little
Yeah, yeah, definitely.
extensively?
Um, and someone had asked about actually, not someone, not just someone, it's, let me put it up here. Gabrielle from Escaping the Cultiverse A. Hi there, friend. Question, Dylan, can you give some insight as to your father's upbringing?
um yeah, well, my father was he's like one of four children. My grandfather um was a deadbeat dad and left his four children to my grandmother, who raised them by herself. So there was a period when, because my grandmother, I don't believe was ever in Scientology at all. It was only my grandfather. Um, so that was something that I believe my father got into once he kind of reconnected with his dad a little more. And so subsequently, that's, when I came into the world, he was back in that side of it and not so much my grandmother, although they kind of had a decent relationship. My dad was raised in the Bay Area, in San Francisco Bay Area, and became a musician. He apparently dodged the draft by having a child. And um, so, it's hard when you find that stuff out because you feel like you were never kind of wanted from the beginning. It wasn't like, when you think about somebody or a couple that wants to have a child, you think of people that um, are intentionally trying to do that. And I know that's like not optimal, people, there's mistakes, but apparently this was to dodge the draft and everybody hated my mom. So um, it was it was weird. And yeah, I don't know. And so my dad is now and has been up at Delphi, Oregon as a teacher for the last 40 years. And that's where he is to this day.
Right, and you said that Liz Gale was one of his students.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, most anybody in the last 40 years that went to Delphi, Oregon was one of his students.
Hmm. Mm,
So, which isn't, it's kind of sucky, but it brings up the whole thing of like your parents, where it's like you want to love that parent and you want, I love the idea of having a parent, but their actions are so, um, they're so despicable that it's hard to just give them a pass, especially when a
right,
lot of us haven't gotten a pass and we've
right.
been held
Yeah.
accountable for, um, like we've been used as scapegoats, and
Mhm.
and as soon as we wake up and speak our truth, we get declared or we get excommunicated or we get labeled as but a potential trouble source, or basically all these ways to shunt or shut you down, for sure.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely. And something that I I kind of had to come to terms with, and I've been saying it to the second gens all along. It's like, what happened to you is not okay. It's not normal, because I just thought it was normal because that's all I knew.
right.
So when it wasn't until I was 36 that I actually had a real taste of the real world. And well, I did have a little stint into the real world between age 18 and 20 before I joined the super terrible scary cult.
Right, right,
I had like a culty upbringing, and then I did, join the crazy Sea Org type cult from age 20 to 36. But
right,
that's all I knew. And when I came out, it was like it took years to really even be able to verbalize, like, number one, that I was in a cult, and also that my parents were just, especially my mother, who kind of wore the pants in the family, was just completely off the rails,
right,
you know.
right,
And it has been hard because she hasn't been able to really come to grips with her part in it. But we sort of have a court a cordial relationship, a casual relationship.
right,
I've just kind of let it be, you know. I don't think until that happens that I could ever be super what I call coochie coo, really, really close to her. But
mm-hmm,
I'm just, that's, I guess, that's her journey, but it's not okay, and
right,
so it was very freeing for me to come to that realization that the people that were, well, in my case, I was adopted, um, when I was 9. So it was, hard for me to, um, be able to separate, um, you know, that they were indoctrinated and all that, but it still was no excuse. You know what I mean?
right,
So I guess, we can talk about this later. Some things, that observations that we've talked about, at another point. And I know there's questions already coming in about what's going on in this space and all that. But I could see like a progression of cult recovery. It's a process, and
right,
I don't. In my case, I don't think it's ever going to be to the point where it's like, oh, I'm fully recovered. I never have to think about that again, you know?
right. No,
So,
absolutely. I think it's something that you don't necessarily have to shoulder, but you kind of have to walk with for a while. Or I mean, I don't see it ending ever, but I think if you start to recognize the triggers and you start
yeah.
to, um, I think one of my weaknesses is I kind of just go, 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 go. And I don't realize that I'm getting worn out or I'm getting overwhelmed. And then I just shut down. I don't usually, I just kind of like go silent. And, um, that's been interpreted in different ways. Unfortunately through my life. So I struggle with um how to be true to who I am, or how or I can't do it anymore, or I can't at that point I have to just step back and being available, or being that person that people would um being the person that I'd want, that I need. Like that's what I remember a lot of times,
Good
um
point. Yeah.
before the Sea Org, after the Sea Org, during the Sea Org, where I knew I could identify by what I felt, what I needed, but that wasn't available. You weren't allowed to have human emotions and reactions in the Sea Org. You weren't allowed,
Mhm.
um, you just weren't. And so, as even from a child learning the TRs, you weren't allowed to blink when you were doing TRs. You weren't allowed to communicate through a via. That's a via. Like you have to just be this stoic figure there comfortably confronting whatever's happening to you. So later in life, when you have these huge traumatic events happen, you go to this comfortable confronting place where you're just able to experience anything, but it's not humanly conducive to to how we are. Like
Yeah.
it's, and we were all, it's also backed up with the fact of like the tone scale. Anything basically below mild interest is down tone. And if you're down tone, you have bad indicators. If you have bad indicators, then people write KRs on you or things that shouldn't be, or ethics comes and finds you. So you're always supposed to have good indicators. You're always supposed, and it's that socialness of like you're being disingenuous to who you really are, but you have no choice because that's how the group is putting it out there. And so later on, like now, I have a hard time playing social. I have a hard time being fake. Like if I know somebody's upset with me, I really don't have like it's hard to be like, oh hey, great to, oh
Right.
yeah, like and
Yeah.
like
I'm like
either
that
let's
too.
talk about it or just not be
Yeah.
around each other. Like no hard anything. Like it's just like sorry, but and I don't do conflict very well, so it's hard. It's hard to do that for me.
We've got some great questions along those lines. If you don't mind me putting
It's
them up,
yeah, for
we
sure.
got Lori plays. Hey, Lori. Question, Dylan. You are one of the purest souls I've ever met. I agree with that. How did you manage in that atmosphere that is so often so negative and harsh?
I assume you mean the Sea Org,
Yeah,
um,
most likely. Yeah.
because I think homelessness is pretty harsh as well,
Yeah.
and
Well,
negative. But
we can
um,
you can
yeah, the
apply
Sea
it
Org.
to you as in general, like how have you been able to cope in the negative and harsh?
I
Because you
think
because you are you I mean, you are like what I would call a resilient person and you're you're just such a nice guy. You have a positive
mm,
attitude. People, always say, "Oh, he's so nice. He's so sweet." Like, how do you yeah, like
um,
you're
I think
you're a
after a lot
miracle. You're
of
a miracle.
yeah, no, um, definitely not. I think it's confronting and accepting who you are, and it's being okay with being fallible, and it's being okay with um how I dealt with it in the Sjorg was there's an idea of you keep um everything is on source, everything is policy, and it's your interpretation of the policy. So some people decided that you had to yell, like tone 40 meant like you stupid, you or da, 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 you better get this done or I'm gonna put you, and like fear, and I grew up with a lot of fear when I was a kid. And so I don't know that you have to lead through fear. You can lead through understanding. And in the Sea Org, I just tried to. I was put in really odd positions where a lot of people are like, now we have this kind of divide here of like who was management and who was not management. And anybody who wasn't management were the victims, and anybody who was management were the perpetrators. And I don't know that I necessarily agree with that, because I think Scientology is meant to turn you into an antisocial personality. It's kind
Right.
of a primer for a narcissist, since that's kind of
Mhm.
the watchword these days. Um, and it's meant to, it's a snitch culture. The ethics and justice systems are there to re-indoctrinate you and get you to, you know, make it so hard that you can't contradict yourself, and you have to agree with their morals, their group rules, or you are the bad guy and you will be ostracized. So I was sent a one-way ticket. What choice do you have? I can't just get up and leave. Like where am I going to go? I'm not even an adult. Like I can't like so you don't have a choice but to stay there. But it doesn't mean you have to be that person. You can still get things done. Um, by kind of like, I looked at it, there's enough Scientology contradictions that if you pick and choose the good stuff,
Right.
there's not, and honestly, that's a weird thing to say, but let me preface this with, after I got out, I really searched for what I believed was the good stuff. Like man is basically good, like life is in you, today and you make your own tomorrows. Like Mark Twain said that. not in those exact words, but
Mhm.
LRH kind of like you can start to
Yeah.
see where this plagiarism comes from.
He stole
And
a
so
lot of
some,
Bible verses too.
well, and concepts, right? A lot of
Yes.
these,
Mhm.
and those were, a lot of organized, this kind of organized religion is meant to make someone a messiah and find followers. So if you use that ancient knowledge, it's
Mhm.
enticing because it's a basic truth. And if you twist it and pervert it, that's where the deception comes in. But the basic truth remains. So if you attribute it to Scientology, sure. But if you can then kind of take that back and attribute it to the real where it came from, 3,000-year-old texts. And then you start to realize, okay, and it puts that person in more of a human perspective rather than like a deity where they want to be. They want to be this all knowing person that stops everybody from knowing more than they are. So that's how they can
Mhm.
get control. So I think it's sort of, you get stuff done, you realize the consequences, you realize that, there are things that are too gruesome to confront. So you handle people the way you would want to be handled, or you don't, and you use your authority as a power grab. And I tried to really treat people as I'd want to be treated. And I really tried to um, relate to those people and get them to want to be part of it and do it rather than forced to do it and they had no choice. So um, that's kind of how I navigated the Sea Org. And
Mhm.
I was put in not upper management. I was put in um, middle management, I guess, but sort of observation, execution arm kind of things. Like we were the hands and feet for international management. Um, so yeah, I was kind of in an interesting position. I wasn't in a service org or anything like that. So
Right, we have a question kind of along those lines, if I can put it up. Tiny Cutlery question: how do they decide who goes higher in the cult, like top level execs? That's a good question.
well, I was in HCO for a long time, and I did all the moving of people up to int from flag for a number of years. So how basically they decided is there's a set of qualifications for each area. And you are basically everything when you join, like, first and foremost, Scientology is an information gathering organization. That's what they do. They gather information and they collate information and they use it for their purposes. Um, so
Sounds
when
like
you
what
first,
OSA is intelligence gathering, right? I mean, they just
no, OSA's primary isn't intelligence to them is information.
right.
It's
Yeah.
just an external facing. OSA was there um, first and foremost for external facing problems, to head those off, to make no situations against the church. And then in the 70s, they realized that there was people infiltrating. A lot of these thought control and MK Ultra and different government and other people would come into Scientology, do all the OT levels, and then go start their own religion. And like Est, and a lot of
Right,
you
yeah.
can look at the Scientology enemies list and from like 1990s, and there's so many. The Process Church is on there. So there's a bunch of organizations that they decided that they needed to have an internal facing arm to find any spies or infiltrators and weed them out. So part of that is a more stringent qualification process. You, I don't know that anybody's ever really talked about the life history questionnaire in Scientology when you go into the Sea Org or staff, but it's extensive. Like it takes hours to fill out because they want everything about you, everybody you've
Mhm.
known, every contact. So that goes in your personnel file along with IQ test, aptitude tests, OSAs, your Oxford Capacity Analysis test, um, and all those things. So you have to have certain qualifications with those. You have to have a clean background. Um, and then you have a certain set of sec checks that are done. And off those sec checks, you get what's called tailor made sec checks based on anything that comes up. And then your ethics file has to have be fairly clean depending on where you're going. So you have all those parameters, and then you put that together in a proposal up to the int personnel department, and they decide whether that person's approved or approved based on, do such or something, like do take this course or get this auditing action, or anything like that. At one point, I know that, I don't think it was a policy, but I know there was an emphasis on it trying to get people up to the higher levels that were like at least clear kind of
Mhm.
thing, so that they're, and that you look at it later and it's more of like an indoctrination thing.
Right.
So really, there weren't very many people qualified to go up to int, um, and to even hold a lot of the posts in the Los Angeles area, like at the continental liaison level, or the CLO. Um, and so those were a management position too. Like, so there's basically two legs. One is like, um, all your tech delivery, all your Scientology delivery services, and getting public in. And that is one arm. And then there's another arm that just watches this arm and does that. And that's like all the CMO units. And that's all the international RTC, WDC, that kind of thing. Um, and they have continental units that watch over each continent while they're up higher. So they could keep those people pretty um,
Yeah. So they,
adherent to
yeah.
Scientology. They're fairly qualified. And then anything higher than that, like the qualifications are just ridiculous. Um,
Yeah, do you think that a lot it seems like a lot of younger recruits were kind of passed through the line maybe because like they're, they hadn't done anything yet, right? They hadn't taken LSD or done anything on that questionnaire, and they're treated like adults, right? Because
right.
they're adults. So, do you think that's part of the reason why people like I just think of Jackson was I think he was 16 when he
Mm-hmm.
was sent to the int base, quite a
Right.
few.
Well, no, and it's sort of half and half, for probably every kid that was in the Sea Org that grew up in it. There's one that, there's so many stories out there that it's, that didn't make it and got disowned or couldn't get through the cadet org or couldn't make it through the EPF into the Sea Org. And then they kind of got discarded. And there were stories on the aftermath about that. There were stories, it was fairly common. I remember seeing it when I was in, and, one of our, Heather, what was her? I don't know her current maiden name, but Heather Bloomberg is who I knew her as, and she was in the organization I was in, and her husband slash second dynamic couldn't get in and got probationally declared.
Hmm.
And so one day you're hanging out with him and we're doing all that, and the next day he's across the street and he's a pariah, and he has nowhere to go because his family's in. It's hard to process that at the time because you don't realize, and then later on when you look at it, and it comes back, you're just like, oh my god, like what kind of life, how do you do that? um yeah, so it's kind of, when people sort of dismiss humans and their individuality, this is what you get, is you get this like numb organization that only cares about, you are this Thetan, you are a self-centered megalomaniac in training, and we'll teach you how to be the most selfish individual you can ever be. And that's kind of like, if you go up the tech part of Scientology, that's what it is. It's all about you, and everybody's there to serve you, and you're the one selfish. Nobody helps each other go up the bridge.
Right.
It's the most selfish, high demand, religious leaning organization that I know of. Because they don't,
Mhm.
and they preach morals and they preach ethics, but
Yeah.
it's not practiced in real life. That you have to have reciprocity, you have to have compassion, and you have to have empathy. And those are not taught. They're not valued, or even respected in Scientology
Yeah.
and especially the Sea Org for sure.
Yeah, it definitely not nurtured. I mean, we talked about this last night, you and I, Dylan, about, um, just having this mentality of, just treating people like like a source of, just a way like a stepping stone, like just step
Right.
over people, not think about their emotions, not be compassionate and empathetic. And yeah, there are a lot of antisocial and narcissistic behaviors that are nurtured more than an empath type, you know line of thinking, right? So
Right.
coming into this space, there are some questions and comments about what's going on now. I don't want you to be uncomfortable. You don't have to answer any of the questions, but I'm going to put a few of them up just
Yeah,
so
sure.
people want to know what you think, because you're one of those very like kind of in the background, stable support people that are there, that people really like. And we're just wondering what you think about things, and how
All
are
right.
you
Let's
coping
do it.
with some of the crap that's going on.
Right.
And I'm not asking you to throw anybody under the bus or anything, but yeah, I think people just want to know, what are
Sure.
some of your thoughts. So, let's see. First we have Kelly Copter. Good evening. Hi, Kelly. Catching up to
Mhm.
hear the fabulous Dylan. So glad to see this collab. Yeah, it's been a long
Thanks,
time.
Kelly.
Been a long time coming.
Sending you
And
good thoughts. I know you're dealing with
yes,
some junk right now, and I really
yeah,
sending you some positive energy to combat for sure.
absolutely. Yeah. Joe said, just read your post, Kelly. Great response to another shitty letter. Yeah. And Sharon said, after this live, go check out Kelly Copter's community section where she responded to a message that Matt Pesh sent her. So I I just found out about it. I kind of just skimmed it right before we went live, but you had a chance to go over it, Dylan.
I saw it this morning when I jumped on YouTube really quick and I saw it. Yeah, I knew Matt Pesh in the Sea Org. He was in a lower org. He was the Treasury Sec at the Flag Service org. Um, he's pretty authentic, genuine guy for the most part when I knew him. Um, this letter it seems a lot like kind of how like Mark and Mike have sort of been handling the situation and um I don't know. It's really hard because I at this I try to live with acceptance over expectations
That's a good
and
point.
um and I try to meet people kind of where they're at, which is hard sometimes and it requires like healthy boundaries. And
Hmm.
when unhealthy boundaries are applied to you, it's hard not to want to react, right? It's hard when you're being accused and judged and Kelly's response was um amazing and eloquent and she spoke from her authentic true self, which is, that's how you build trust in these kind of communities where trust is so fragile. And so,
Absolutely.
we look for any small differences. We're all fighting for the same thing, but we get stuck on this narcissism of like small differences. And it can be a huge thing. I mean, there's communities in history that went to war over an egg and then their interpretation of it. So,
Mm,
um I try to hold some understanding for where they're coming from, but at the same time, I believe in order to um, make this trauma bearable, is you have to lead with a lot more understanding and truth, and you have to be vulnerable, and you have to, these people are just defending and attacking. So they've backed themselves into a corner that they don't feel comfortable in, and it's their corner. So anybody that comes into their corner is going to be looked at as a threat. So then if you back away, they're not reaching though. So we can't find a common ground and compromise at this point. And I saw a comment in there, I think by Creepy or whatever, but
Mhm.
I loved Claire too. And Claire, like, I don't not love her now.
Mhm.
Um, but I'm experiencing the same thing. I did nothing and she's completely disconnected from me. She went from responding and being a friend and being somebody that I did videos with her, and when all this happened, I was like, oh my God, I'm going to get looked at. And this is the divisiveness that gets created is,
Yeah, sad.
by your past actions. Now you're going to be judged as to who you are. And that there's no trust in that. There's no, how do you find a common understanding and compromise when one party isn't willing? Well, what I've learned is you have to distance yourself from those and that I don't know that I don't know how to do that because this is it's the only family I have, right?
Mhm.
And um
It's okay, Dylan, we
it's
cry a
it's
lot
just
in this channel.
it's just hard to see them. It's really hard to see these people tearing themselves apart when we all share the same, and it's not the same religion. Like, we can all experience our trauma different ways. We can all, but there, to me, and I'm so trying not to be judgmental. Um, this feels like a big defense mechanism. It feels like they're doing everything they can to not confront what's happening, and they're trying to use all this stuff to deflect and deny and avoid any kind of accountability. I've been held accountable my entire life,
Right,
and when
yeah.
I wasn't held accountable, I held myself accountable. And what I mean by that is when I blew from the Sea Org and I was chased down by Jackson and all the other gold security guards on their blow drill to get me
Mhm,
to return because I was somebody that nobody could talk to on the RPF. I was isolated on the RPF. I was sent to the RPF's RPF because that was the best place for me, because I had come from a place that was higher than int.
mhm,
And nobody int knew what I knew. And if I said anything, it would be a problem for whoever. Um, so when I left that, um, when you leave the int base, you are instantly declared, and there's no chance of recovery. That's pretty much LRH policy.
mhm.
Um, and I left my soulmate there. She's still there right now, and not without trying to talk to her. But when people are, she was reindoctrinated directly under Shelley Miscavige for months, like for 8 months. So when I saw her, it was just a plead for love or a plead for connection. And she just said, keep on the RPF, stay on it. And, then she wrote a care on me for talking to her. And for me as a person, that was really hard because I always believe, I don't think a relationship is a contract. I don't think it's some business arrangement that you have, you can have business arrangements anywhere with anyone. You don't even really have to like them. But a relationship is something that you're there because you want to be. You choose to share your time and your space with another human being, and they also share and choose to do that with you. And that to me is what more of a relationship is. Um, so when I blew the ant base, um, I hadn't talked to anybody in 7 or 8 years, like nobody. Luckily, I was in California again, not Florida, I guess. But here I am now, an adult, and I left and took a bus to back up to Northern California because it's the only place I'd ever known besides the Sea Org. And I basically got disconnected from everyone. And I ended up just living on the streets and not couch surfing. No, I mean, what friends would I have had at the time? I wouldn't. So, but at the time, I also believed it. I got sent my SP declare. I got shown and told and swatted as to how awful of a person I was, and I internalized it. I left the only group that was saving, like whatever their PR. I bought it. I
Yeah.
still and so I spent the next 4 years just living um in fight or flight for the most part to make it a little easier. Um
Mhm.
but I put myself in, like, I punished myself. I was my own punisher at that time. And I forget what we were talking about as far as having no, but
Yeah.
what I mean is I've thrown myself um off enough cliffs. I've challenged my existence a lot during that time. And I had times where there were signs that kept me there. And I don't know whether I was looking for them or something was telling me I should still be here. But that was a pretty, like, normal existence. Is if I wasn't contemplating that, I was putting myself in positions to um challenge everything, because fight or flight is, after a while, it's almost like an addiction. You to feel, you have to feel that intense fear or that
Mm.
intense emotion or that intense depression. Um, so I was my own worst enemy, and I punished myself on behalf of the church. And I think that's kind of what you do.
So you
um,
believed that you were a suppressive person and a dreaded being.
well, there must have been something wrong with me to leave. Like, and my family confirmed it, and like it wasn't. It was just, I even tried to do my A to E steps at one point, just to try to talk to my father, just to have, at one point it went from all I wanted to do was have a conversation. I didn't even want connection again. I mean, I don't know what I wanted. I wanted to just be able to have closure. And I spent a lot of years trying to get that and burning a lot of bridges, honestly. With extended family and stuff like that, because there wasn't much I wouldn't do to try to talk to my father. Um, and then I got really mad at him, and I don't know, I wanted to beat him up and then give him the biggest hug I could. Uh,
Well,
so,
good, because I wanna
uh,
beat him up, and I don't
right.
wanna
But it's hard
I'm
because
glad you
it's
finally got mad, because you're just so I wanna put this up from Kelly, because I was thinking the same thing as, Kelly Copter sending you so much love, Dylan. Your kindness shines. You're a beautiful soul. I know it's just amazing that you're not bitter, that you're showing, compassion and understanding to these people that, kind of came out sort of smelling like a rose, honestly. This is my opinion. Even though, like, like Mike, Mark, Claire, all of them, they were terribly tortured. They were traumatized, and they were groomed as children. But at the same time, again, what going back to what I said in the beginning, it's not okay. Um,
right.
it's not okay, right? We can't excuse those behaviors,
Well,
but I love your approach. I
I
love
think it's
your attitude. I think you have a
right.
beautiful attitude about it.
I think it's more of like, at one point, I'm not nobody's asking them to do anything that they're not willing to do, that those people aren't willing to do themselves. I wouldn't ask
Mhm.
Claire and Mark anything that I'm not willing to do. And
Yeah.
I've experienced similar trauma, and I don't want to marginalize or compare trauma, or and honestly, I believe my story um isn't nearly as bad as a lot of other people's stories. And that's, I know that's pretty common of somebody who's endured trauma, but at the same time it also gives me a point of reference of I know I was there. I understand. I've experienced it.
Yeah.
So I know, and I choose not to be that person. And that, I think that's what it really comes, is if you don't challenge yourself to really see who you are and try to be that
Yeah.
person, then you can use all these defense mechanisms and
Right.
engage flying monkeys and make, scapegoats and golden children, and do all these things that basically is a defense mechanism to keep you away from that trauma. So in one instance, would I want everything that happened to me? No, I would love to give it all away and never have experienced and never have any of these memories.
Yes, your genuine kindness.
And then I wouldn't want anybody else to have it. And I wouldn't. So I would rather keep it. So, um, is it easy? No, it's not. Um, but it's kind of that what doesn't kill you kind of makes you stronger.
Yeah.
And we talked about it last night. Like having kids really kind of changes everything. And it also brings up a lot of selfishness. It brings up a lot of um you want it seems so easy to be the parent. It seems so easy to be that person that you never had. And then you start thinking, like, why didn't my dad just do that? Why didn't Liz's, like, why didn't Claire's? Why didn't, like, it
Yeah.
doesn't mean just because they're in denial and they don't use it. Like, why, it's hard to be, I don't know, is ignorance bliss? Like
Yeah.
that's,
Well, they
and
don't
it's,
want to
I
be
don't think it
vulnerable,
is. It's
It's
rhetorical.
yeah, that
Um,
is true. Yeah.
but it's, you don't have to look at all the shades of gray. You don't have to, um, confront those things. You can deflect them. You can deny. You can blame it on other people. And like even with the Matt Pesh thing, it's like you want to I can see part of it where you want to normalize it and be like, it wasn't so bad, and I would have steak on the RPF and all this. And at the same time, it's like, well, let me put it like this.
Steak?
My youngest son, well, he
They
has
have rice
stories
and
about like
beans? Don't
where
they have rice and beans?
he wouldn't eat
Yeah.
that stuff, and they gave him other things. But um my youngest son is, and I'm not a huge astrology fan, but it's really weird, all the coincidences. So I'm going to use that as a reference. Is he's a Gemini, and I'm a Libra, so that's why I'm probably a blabbering mess. Um,
It's all good.
is
Have you met me?
right. Um, yeah, but it's different when you do it, Marilyn. It's no, I'm
No,
kidding.
it isn't.
Um,
This
he's
is coffee
12,
cult and crying.
right? He's 12, and he's a really emotional boy, and I love that about him, how he expresses his emotions. And I realized something because he would cry, like in 5th grade, he would cry when he got overwhelmed, and he didn't realize it was overwhelm, but he would just like
Mm,
freeze and kind of cry. And he was then telling me that like the teachers and other kids, they didn't know how to act around that. And even though other kids do it, I mean, it wasn't just him. It's pretty common as your development. It's weird when you learn about developmental stages
mm,
and you're like, oh, right. Like, I get it. Like, this is
yeah.
normal behavior. So I'll create a safe space for you to process those emotions. And so as part of that, what I told him was like, as you get older, you got to like, and this is hard for me because I never was taught this, and I had to kind of learn it through my kids and learn it through reaching. And is when you're in social situations, it's our responsibility to, let's say I'm doing something and everybody around me is reacting and it's like, oh my God, if I just keep doing it, it's sort of socially irresponsible. And now, if I don't have a safe place and all that, I get it. Like, but if I can have the wherewithal to say, this is to my environment at the time, instead of just lashing out and getting this crazy reaction back, if I could say, I'm completely overwhelmed right now. I don't know how to express myself, or just say I'm overwhelmed. That's really all you have to say. That's what I kind of told him.
Right.
And just be
Yeah.
like, either can I have a minute or I don't understand, just, and then not diminish that, but then find the place that you know is safe where you can process those emotions. And that's not always in a social setting, but it needs to happen. You need, and if you don't have that safe space, that's what parents are supposed to do, is we're supposed to provide that safe space for them to be confused and to make mistakes and to say things and to figure stuff out, so that then when they go back into society, maybe that overwhelm won't be so much, or when it is, they'll know that they have a safe space to go back to, and they can be like, no, I'm okay, I just need a minute.
Yeah.
And then they don't feel weird. And it's a hard thing to kind of understand for me, because I never had that. When you get accused of
Mm.
something, you have to confess in Scientology. You have to write up your overts and withholds. And that's in the form of time, place, form, and event. You have to tell the exact time, exactly where you were in the physical universe, exactly what happened, and what was it that happened. So it wasn't like you can that's not safe. You're basically
Right.
saying,
Yeah.
here, crucify me for all this information I just gave you. And so as a child, you need to have that safe space. So I've kind of seen that. And I think, um, raising children and being the father that I never had, I've honestly, if I'm being super honest, I think in the last like 6 to 8 months, maybe year, I've let go of all the jealousy. I've let go of ever wanting to be, because I know I can't ever be that child. I never can be a kid that was loved and cared for and not neglected, but I can give that love.
Yeah.
And I've known that for a long time, but the whole getting over, like, now when I go to the store, I don't look at buying stuff for me. I look at what my kids would like. I
Mhm.
I buy food based on that. I'm happy. I make my kids lunches every day, because even though Colorado has free lunches, they don't really like the food that well. And I love doing that for them, because I know that when they go to lunch, they have something that they really want to eat and nourish themselves with. And those are the things that bring up a lot of weird trauma, because my family never, they didn't care. The Sea Org, nobody gave a shit about that at all. Um,
Yeah.
So it's hard. I think that part is hard. And that's why these kind of groups should be here, in my estimation, is to help each other through that, and to, um, be there for, like, to hold space for each other and not center ourselves in someone else's journey, and when they land that plane, then you can stand up and say, look, here's my journey. And that's what's needed. And that's, I think, a lot of people that come into this group, or this, whatever, SBTV slash healing cult, like from high demand, is those are what people are looking for, is that, our trust has been so much diminished, and we have every reason not to trust and no reasons to trust. So it's prove me wrong.
Yeah.
That's how I am. I know everybody leaves. Everybody I know leaves. I'm alone, I'll be alone. And I don't, it's not even a victim thing anymore. Again, it's acceptance over expectations. As long as I expect people to willingly want to be in my space, that's an expectation, and I'm preparing myself to be, um, disappointed. So
Right.
if I don't have that expectation and I just accept that if people want to be here, I'll embrace that. Um, then then I can meet people where they're at, and we can actually have a proper discord and a proper, Right? There you go. I
Yeah,
was trying to be
yeah,
relevant.
right. So we've
So,
got a couple of we got a super chat for you. Hugs from Diana B.
thanks,
Libra
Diana.
unit hugs, Dylan. Another Libra. There's lots of Libras in here. They'll understand.
Pisces. I like Pisces.
I'm a Sagittarius, but I don't know
Yeah.
really what that means because we weren't allowed to look at the horoscopes or anything. My adopted mom used to cut them out of the newspaper because
Mhm.
they were of the devil. Everything,
Sure.
yeah,
Sure.
everything was of
For
the
us, it
devil.
was anytime they printed OT3 in the papers, it was like you couldn't even touch the paper. So, but and I honestly found astrology when I was homeless. I used to spend a lot of times in libraries and public spaces because otherwise you do drugs and that, and I really was never into that. I was the most awkward
Hmm.
homeless person ever. Um, so I just spent a lot of time in libraries, and I spent a lot of time just sitting, in multi-story libraries, hidden away somewhere reading books.
Hmm.
And astrology was one of them. There's a really good astrology book called The Rising Sign. And it seems to give a really good, just basic, um, overview of it and not too poignant or anything.
Hmm.
There you go.
Well, yeah, when you're talking about being homeless, you were literally homeless. Like I've never really lived on the streets, but I've been homeless twice in my life, on and off from age 5 to age 9 before the Child Protective Services, you know, like, came in and put me in the foster home, and then
Hmm.
from age 18 to around 20, on and off again, and I do remember just, relying on myself and, like you said, not having the expectations that anybody was gonna want to help me or that would help me, and when I had my own kids, it was like, um I'm gonna try not to cry, but, like, as I come home for the first time, right? Because I never felt like I had a home ever,
Mm. Oh, right.
you know what I
Yeah,
mean?
yeah. No,
So,
for sure. Well, you build
yeah,
the home then. You create that space. It's not even the dwelling. I totally, yeah. I mean, and you were able to create that space, and that was foreign, and that was the
yeah, it
first
wasn't a
time in,
physical right, it
right,
wasn't a physical space, it was literally, like, feeling like, I belong somewhere, you know?
right, right, right. And that's powerful. That is absolutely powerful. And it's so subtle that you don't realize it, but it hits hard when you never had it. Um, yeah.
Here we go. Coffee, cults, and crying.
It's
Yeah.
yeah, living, I don't know. I guess, I mean, homeless is subjective. It's hard. You have to do a lot of things that are, you have to steal a lot, and you have to be dishonest, and it's a really hard place to be. I still, um driving around, I look for places that would be good to sleep, that nobody would bother you. Everywhere I go. It's really strange.
Aw,
I don't know that that'll ever go away. But it's
yeah.
also kind of like, I mean, what if something happens and I need to have a place to sleep? So I would like, oh, that's a good place. Um, so I kind of think, I don't know. I'm not really sure how I feel about that one, but I just kind of embrace it and do
Yeah,
it.
I'm sure it's like it's one of those like you said you lived in that fight or flight mode for so long. And you know, I was thinking the other day about perspective. Like I was just so kind of really fixated on this whole aftermath foundation thing and all that for,
Right.
for a while and all that. And then I was in Walmart the other day, and I am the founder of a nonprofit that helps fire victims and like myself,
Right.
and there was a big fire that I had to kind of spring into action. And then when I was at the hospital, I don't think I told any of our listeners this the other day, but there was another one 2 days later. So it's been and my husband was in having surgery, so it's like it's been this, one thing after another and realizing that, you know, I could be get so upset over this letter from Matt Pesh and all that, and I am pretty upset because, you mess with Kelly Copter, you're gonna
Right.
piss me off, right? But, I could be so upset about that, but it's really put it into perspective. There's people that literally lost their homes, all their belongings. Thank goodness, the first thing I asked is, how is everybody? How are the fur babies? Any,
Mhm.
pets or
Mhm.
animals? Everybody, both fires, everybody's been safe. I don't know why this area has so many darn fires, but our nonprofit really is will get really, really, really busy, and then there'll be, 4 to 6 months without any. But
Right.
yeah, just putting things into perspective. Like, you have a home, you have a roof over your head right now, you have your children. So there's times when, I have to kind of step back and say, nobody's nobody's in danger physically or anything right now, and, all is good right now. So
Right.
yeah, I think that a part of being resilient, I was looking up some things about it yesterday and presented, some things about it, and part of being resilient is being able to, um, look at the positive aspects of things, um, kind of
Right.
like be able to be flexible. And one thing that it mentioned, which I thought was great, was having a sense of humor, because that's something that's really gotten me by,
Right.
is, being able to see the humor in things,
Well, and
you
that's,
know?
laughter is also kind of a defense mechanism. So when it's overwhelming,
Yeah.
sometimes it's easier just to chuckle and be like, ha ha. It doesn't mean you think it's funny. It just means like, I don't
No.
know, this is coming out this way and that's all I got. Like right now, unless you want me just to go into my, entire everything that bothers me, this is what you're going to
I get
get
it.
is some laughter. So yeah, I get it. I mean, and that's part of it is you can't, I don't know, it's hard to take yourself super seriously. Um, but at the same time, it's like you have to validate your feelings. And that's hard when you were
Mhm.
taught that your feelings are invalid.
Right.
So it's something that's uncomfortable. I know that um, even when you start searching for your triggers, you don't like I'll give you like most days is normal days. I get up, make my kids food, I drive them to school. Everything's pretty cool. We joke and laugh and listen to music or we talk about what's going on. And then I'm driving away from school and it's usually a few miles or maybe not till I get almost to where I'm working that day or whatever. But this just huge well of anxiety just starts coming up in me. Like I drank like 8 cups of coffee or something.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I have no idea what those triggers are. I have no idea. And sometimes it lasts the whole day. Sometimes it just goes away but usually without missing, it's almost every day. And I think that's that residual trauma that lives in us. And it's, all you can kind of do is acknowledge it and try to, live with it and not live with it in a way of like you're powerless, but just understand that nothing's wrong with me. It's just part of, what my existence is. It's my timeline. And I have a lot of fight or flight and I don't like to fight. I'll avoid fighting and conflict as much as I
Yeah.
possibly can. It just doesn't
Yeah,
it's
me
not
too.
productive.
I don't like the person I become when I'm really, really, really pissed off. So
Right.
I do use other coping mechanisms, the fawning, like being nice to somebody, the fleeing, and all the things. And when I get into fight mode, it's like, oh no, oh no,
Well, and
I
it's
don't like
fire and
that.
brimstone. Like it's
Yeah,
like, "Oh, you're gonna bring a knife? Well, I'll bring a gun. You're gonna bring a gun? Okay, I'll bring a cannon." Like we're gonna escalate this, and so I'm not gonna go there because you
yeah,
want all my trauma? You want everything I've been through right now in my life, and I'll put it to you right now. Like, and not
yeah.
you, but
I know
I'm
what you're
saying
saying.
whoever
No,
that
I
person.
get it.
And it's
Yeah,
um, so I try to avoid that because it's not something that I would rather keep cleaning out the wounds and not just dump all my stuff on someone. And and then a lot of people handle that in different ways, and that's why it's hard to meet people where they're at sometimes.
yeah. Did you find that it was, well, I learned a lot of this through going to counseling. I don't know if as I have therapy. I don't know really the difference, but um, being able to pinpoint things and, like you said, finding your triggers. I never was allowed to have triggers. I was never allowed to. It was like no excuses, right?
Right.
It was kind of like the pull you pulled it in. You're not a victim. You never can be a victim. So
Right.
there was a form of that in my life, even growing up, and then definitely in the superstar dark scary cult, right? So when I was going through like a recovery period, it was really hard for me to actually be kind enough to myself to say, hey, um, like recognizing why I'm so scared when
Mm.
when people have fire around me, or why I'm so scared of like getting in a car accident. Um, my husband is a little bit of a crazy driver, and I have like that handle. I
Right.
call it the
Four
oh shit
seatbelts.
handle. Yeah, yeah. Yeah. So, and I really it was like, 'cause there's this joke in my family that, like, about me, like, wanting to just wrap my kids in bubble wrap, because so
Right.
much
Right.
shit had happened to me that I wanna just, like, I am a little bit naggy too. It's like, "Go to the dentist, do this," and they're all in their 20s now, but
Right.
I try not to do it, but I realize that it's like, you know what? If I recognize it and accept it, then I'm able to kinda keep it in check too, you know?
Right. And those
Uh,
are enduring qualities. I mean, that only comes from love. It doesn't come, and it comes from a place that we never got that attention, and we were never really doted on. We were meant to be serve a purpose,
yeah,
and that's, and honestly, what you were saying is, with the concept of like mind, body, and spirit, like, a lot of people in these religions teach you to kind of like live in the mind and make these circuits and these neural pathways that are only conducive to what their ends and means. And if you start living and it kind of through your heart, your mind takes on a different thing, and it can become a battle. But like what you're saying, some of this is visceral, where when your body talks to you, that means it's gone past this point of all this other stuff. Like, the body's usually your last line of like, hey, knock it off, like, or this
yeah,
is bad, run,
yeah,
those kind of things. Like, and that's where, because it doesn't speak to us very much, we're not really, a lot of us, and myself is what I'm speaking to mostly, is I wasn't really in tune to listening to it as much. And in the Sea Org, you just ignore it. Your body is just you're just, that's a meat body. It's nothing. Where, a lot of these things you're like even that anxiety, it's like I am like, okay, and I try to lean into it a little, because it's, what is this that I'm being told that I'm ignoring?
right, yeah,
And it's like, so
exactly, yeah,
it's kind of, if we're not taught those things, it's even if we bring it to full circle to the SPTV kind of whole debacle, I would almost bet that these people feel awful, but they're ignoring it and they're projecting it to other people because they can't read those signs and be true to who they are, because
mhm,
we're lost in these personas and we get lost in all these of who we think we should be. And this is, if I heal from a cult, I can't ever have a problem. If I do this, I have to be successful, and then I can never get touched. And there's all these personas, and where's the real you? Well, your body's
mm,
screaming what the real you is, but you're ignoring the out of that. And and that's part of why we lead to these small differences, and these become what, mountains out of molehills.
mhm,
And a lot of this stuff could be, the things I don't like is the judging on behalf of the greater. We're right, you're wrong, and the reason why you're wrong is because you're so horrible. It's like,
right,
really? Yeah,
yeah.
we all know that. I know I'm horrible. Thanks. I don't need to be told that anymore.
Right, and
Oh,
that's a really good point. No, that's a really good point, as far as, like, it's for about lack of a better word, disconnection that's happened. Like you said, you had a relationship with Claire. I know there's other people that she told them, that she loved them, that she was like their adopted mom, and a lot of the second gens really don't have parents, right? So
right.
that really burned my biscuits, because I look at these second gens as just these precious souls that really are trying to heal and trying to do good in the world and trying to help these children get out of this cult, and I know
Right.
that the quote OGs are too, we call them the OGs, are as well. They're trying um to bring down Scientology and set the captives free and help people through the Aftermath Foundation. So they have the same goal, but there's those little behaviors and there's still some lingering
Right.
things that kind of have been taken from the cult mentality that really haven't been
Well, is there a
handled
wrong
and
way
dealt
to
with.
heal? You know,
No, I don't.
like,
Yeah,
right? Like that's
yeah.
it's sort of like,
I don't
well,
think
our
so.
way, we're
No.
telling you how you're supposed to be and how you're supposed to get out and what you're supposed to do and who
Yeah,
you're supposed to like. Is there really a wrong way to heal? Like if somebody's
yeah,
reaching for that and reaching to like say, "Hey, I have all this trauma and this can affect me adversely for the rest of my life," or I can choose like a healing journey, or I can choose to survive and overcome that. That doesn't
yeah,
mean you dismiss that means you conceptually understand and accept where you came from. And with that, that should spawn like empathy that, oh, right, you too have experienced trauma. And we
mhm.
can relate because it's so overwhelming, isn't it?
Yeah, I don't
And
think
it's
there's
so
any right way
like,
to heal, and I honestly, I don't really agree with people that are so adamant saying that if you have not been through therapy or counseling, you haven't healed. Um,
right,
who am I to say that? I mean, for me, it has helped a lot, but I don't think it should be a requirement to be like, "Okay, you're healed and you're not." But
right.
when if
This is the
someone
only path. And if you don't do
right,
this,
right.
you're not healed.
Exactly,
That's
like,
not
I don't
how
really
it
agree with
works.
that, but at the same time, and not not even saying that therapy has to be a prerequisite, but when there's people that are, kind of still having this rank, still having this like you said, expectation, when there's people in my inbox telling me not to speak my truth, not to mention anything, not to just,
Right.
to
Well,
be
they're
quiet and just
violating your
be
right to have healthy boundaries. And that's
exactly,
what even
so
like Bunny Mellon says, but I think it's okay to call out bad or controlling behavior. Absolutely. It is.
yeah,
But you don't have to do it through ad hominems and you don't have to do
right,
it through
exactly,
judgment.
right,
Well, the reason why you have bad behavior is because you're this. Well, you're the most awful person. But
mhm,
right below DM, there's you. And you wouldn't even, it's like, really, how does that help anybody? If you're on a healing journey, well, for one, if you're on a healing journey, you would never say that to someone else.
mhm,
Just period. You would never marginalize somebody else's trauma and how they expect. You know what I get a lot, to bring it back to me and not talk about other people, is I don't necessarily, when I'm uncomfortable, I speak in very odd ways, like via text and via like, because it feels almost passive aggressive when I get super super uncomfortable, but it's because I'm so uncomfortable I don't know what to say because I'm already shaming myself. I'm
mhm,
already making less of myself. So I'm coming into a conversation as less than. And that's my trauma, but it's hard to keep that out when you're like, okay, wait a minute, I reached out to you, I was trying to be relatable and this and that, and then you responded very businesslike. So
mhm,
okay, I get it, so let's be businesslike, but then there's no reciprocation of, there's no reciprocity. So now I'm like, I don't know what to do. Are you mad at me? Do you hate me? Like, and I know those are all trauma things, and those are all parts of, when you feel, it's hard not to feel like, okay, well, I'm healing. So if it's a me problem, I can fix it. If it's a you problem, oh, hmm. I can't
yeah.
fix a you problem.
Yeah, and
I can
it
support
really brings
you,
it
but I
right, it
can't
brings it
fix
back to
it.
healthy yeah, it brings it back to healthy boundaries again.
Right. Well, and that's that, unfortunately, I don't think it should ever have to come to that. But that is our weapon or our tool. Weapon's probably a bad word. Tool to, when there is destructive behavior and it adversely affects you, is you have that tool to say, okay, well, I'm going to set this healthy boundary. And that might be
Mhm,
space. That might be like, okay, I will only talk to you about these. And you don't even have to mention it. You can just know that as long as I see these patterns of behavior and I start to feel this way, I have to set this healthy boundary until
Yes.
they either acknowledge that, and that reciprocity is now where we can find a common ground and compromise.
Mhm.
I mean, if anybody ever wants, this is the biggest problem I have with everything that's happened, is it seems like half of the people that are doing a lot of the defending and accusing, they want to be most right, and they want everybody else to be wrong.
Right.
And then they can't see this compromise. They can see, like, well, how could you even ever think anything about me because I am so beyond reproach? All I do is give of my
Right.
time. That's so hard and so awful. And how could you ever think anything but the glory of God to me? And I'm exalted. And, it's like, no,
Right.
we're all equals. We're all
Well,
created
yeah, that's
equally.
oh, and that's the whole deflection thing, right? Is
Right.
like no one is saying that all the things that you've done is bad. No one's taking that away from you. I've said over and over and over till I'm blue in the face, that the Aftermath show helped me so much. Helped me
Right.
so much. The Fair Game podcast helped me so much. Being in this community has helped me so much. It really, really, really has. And I want to give back. I want to pay things forward and all that. And I felt like I was really trying to do that. And then when, everything happened and like you said, the ad hominem attacks, just the name calling and all that. And it just seems like every time we hear from the other, I hate to even say side, but it's just more like accusations and like just
Well, it creates you to
nasty.
put
It's
your guard
nasty.
up because it's
Yeah.
like, wait a second, you're not
Yeah.
being forthcoming, you're accusatory, and you're causing me to either react or withdraw.
Yeah.
And it is a lot ego. Ego is kind of one of those things where it's like you're not willing to look at anyone else's point of view. You're not willing to even consider that somebody might see the blue sky as maybe green, or maybe, and if it's one of those things where if we haven't gotten to a point where we can accept another person's point of view, then it kind of brings into question of, like, can they accept
Mhm.
themselves? Can they accept
Right.
who they are? Or do they have to live in this life of deflection? And that requires
Mhm.
people to be around it. Honestly, the, I went to, when I was, yeah, the part of the story that I completely avoid in my life is after you get healed and you kind of think you have tools in your toolbox and you can, like, live life. Well, a lot of trauma survivors will become codependent and will try to help
Mhm.
and fix other people. Well, I married
Mhm.
one of those people that had no intention of ever being fixed, of ever dealing with her alcoholic parents or the narcissism. But I thought, well, look what I went through. I can just show you that this is what you can, like, and not that I'm this be all end all, but it's like, it's okay to accept them for who they are, but have healthy boundaries. But when people aren't willing to go through that journey, it doesn't matter. You can say whatever you want,
Mhm.
and you're going to end up being the target
Yeah.
because you're a threat to them. You represent truth, you represent, like, authenticity, and they're not playing that game right now. They're playing defense, deny, attack, reverse victim and offender. And
Mhm.
that's totally okay, but what does that require? It either requires you accept it and you say, "Yep, that's who they will, that's who they are, and I accept it, but I'm going to hang out with them." Or you have to distance yourself. That's it.
Yeah.
There's no other options. and
Yeah.
and until they make those decisions, and they might never do it. So that's why you have to either accept it or distance yourself. And that's hard. It's hard when you don't have family and you don't have you know, I haven't spoken, my family doesn't, it's funny. I always, it's interesting, the Scientology indoctrination goes. I say I haven't spoken to my family in 20, like, no, they haven't. They've chosen to disconnect from me because they've
Right.
labeled
Yeah.
me,
Yeah.
and I
It's not your
internalize
choice.
that, and I either accept that or I say, you know what is it, like, that's your opinion, man. and I don't have to love it, but I
Right.
get that that's your opinion. Do
Yeah.
I wish it was different? Yeah, I do. I wish I had a relationship with my father, even though he gave me away and wanted me to go to the RPF. Why now? Because I want my kids to have family. I want my kids to, I feel like I can't give them all that, and they deserve it all. I want my kids to be better than I could ever have been. And I keep this idea that I need to have this family unit around me. And then
Right.
people, extended family that grew up and have shared experiences, I think, well, God, those people, but you get lost up in that idea of hope, and you realize that trust
Yeah.
is something that maybe will never come for a lot of these people. And it makes sense. Is it okay? Not really. But does it make sense what from what they've had to endure? Yeah. I should never trust again. I ever. But at the same time, in order to trust, you have to take a leap of faith. And that requires being on no ground and no footing. And that's what they're not willing to do. They're so locked in to their place. Nobody's going to push them over a cliff. Nobody's going to make them jump. Nobody's going to be like everybody's Osa. It's sad to
Yeah.
see when you look at it, because if you
Yeah, it
ever
is.
lose that willingness to take that leap of faith, which requires risk.
Mhm.
I never want to have a risky day in my life, but I know to live, I have to,
Yeah.
and it requires a leap of faith. So
Yeah,
anyway, I'll get off my
something that just
soapbox.
keeps no, that's okay. No, it really sparked a lot of thoughts in me, talking about, the kids. I really try to be the person that I wish I had, right? That's,
Right.
the Gandhi
Mm.
thing, right? But, how do you do that? There's so many concepts in the world that I didn't know. I was never taught how to
Mm.
act, how to, like, make it in the world, like, just as a person, right? How to relate to people, how to, just function like a, quote, "normal person," who is normal, right? But, what's funny is some of these concepts I've been looking up are, these great articles from things like LinkedIn and Expedia and all these not Expedia, what's the one, the
Like, isn't
job
that a
one?
plane thing?
No, 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 the
LinkedIn
job one. LinkedIn and what's
is
the
the
job
job
one?
one.
Yeah.
Uh,
Sorry. Anyways, it was just like things that you would kind of already know, right?
mm-hmm.
Like
Mm-hmm.
um how to resolve conflicts, right? How to win friends and influence people in a not controlling way, not an asshole way. How to,
Right.
like not call names. You learn that in kindergarten, right? Be a
Mm-hmm.
friend to make a friend, right? Um I've been, looking these things up, like the thing we talked about last night about the trust triangle and
Mm-hmm.
things like that about resilience. Resilience. I got an article from LinkedIn from that. It begins with an I. So, anyways, I can't believe I don't remember the job thing, but yeah. So I've been thinking about that, and it's like I'm not expecting Mike, Mark, Claire, all them to do my will or bidding. I'm not even trying to convince them of anything, but I'm looking at it as a person who does kind of know about nonprofits. I've seen how healthy nonprofits function. You don't have to invent the wheel. You can just
Mm-hmm.
Google stuff, right? Like
Right.
how to pick a board, how to how
But
to
when you
make
think,
a
right.
how to make how to make a some bylaws, right? How to put together, a PR package. You can just Google it, right? And they're
Right.
not doing that. It's like it just doesn't
And
it's
maybe they are,
insanity
but
to
they
me.
decided that they're more right. Like
They're not
it's
acting on
hard
it.
to, right. Well, no, and they're not. It's um there are, I do get being trapped in that, like when you kind of get overwhelmed, it's hard to function. It's hard to even think like, oh, maybe I should just solve the problem by looking it up or seeing what other people, that's kind of a learned thing. And when you rely on what you know, and you
Yeah,
take these neural pathways, and instead of like maybe regrooving them, you just kind of relabel them. And then so you're using the same basic neural pathways, but you're just calling it something different,
right.
because that's what's acceptable in society. So it's that
That's
that
true.
whole idea of
Yeah,
persona, where they're taking on this persona of being these helpers or whatever, but in actual fact they're not really reintroducing new pathways. They're not
Mm.
doing it in a way, and that's also a defense mechanism. It's
Yeah.
who's to say what's too gruesome to confront. Some
Yeah.
people can't stand the smell of coffee and they throw, it's like, but some people love it. So who's wrong or right there? I think it really comes down to where when somebody's in a position of being, um they put themselves in this position of being this help person. Like I'm a
Yeah.
gatekeeper for the,
Yeah.
and
And
that's
that's
when
where,
it
yeah,
becomes different, right? Is
exactly. Yeah.
like talking about most youth counselors, what had a great life, BMW when they were 16, went to Hart. No, 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 no. They were gang members. They grew up
Hmm.
in poverty stricken. You know why? Because they know what it's like to live that life. They know what it's like to not have a safe space at home, not have a safe space at school, not have a safe space anywhere. So you don't want to go to school, you don't want to go home, so you end up they know what that's like, and that's what gang members and stuff gets they prey on. So somebody who goes through that and accepts that healing journey, well, of course they're going to want to help other people. But they do it in a way of like, "Hey, here's what you're experiencing right now, right?" And they're like, "Yeah, that is." And it's like, "Right, because I live that."
Mm.
That's different than like relating to somebody through like being humble and vulnerability
Hmm.
rather than being like know best or saying, don't do it because it's bad. There's a bad target over there. And if you say anything against anybody, you don't want that bad target to be taken down. It's like, wait a sec, what? That's just flawed in the concept of what you're saying. So I think it's um putting in the work is important. And some people put in the work because they feel they need to, and some people feel put in the work because they have no choice, and then some people just sort of play the part,
Hmm.
unfortunately. And
Yeah. And it's like, I feel like it's everyone's prerogative to, if they want to be independent Scientology. I'm not saying anybody is on the board or anything, but if they want to,
mm-hmm,
that's fine. If they don't want to act like people that are in the world that know about nonprofits, if they don't want to, that's fine, whatever. But they're sitting on $200,000 of all y'all's money out there. That's what was kind of burning my biscuits, right? So
right.
I was like talking to him blue in the face, and then I got to the point where, like, that whole perspective thing, I was like, you know what? I think it's time to turn my focus personally. I was like, I've said all I can say. And they can choose to run the nonprofit into the ground if they want to. They can choose
Right.
to listen to people who do kind of know, how. I'm not saying myself, I'm just saying, in general, listen to the second gens that are asking questions, listen to, reason from the outside world. If they don't want to, that's their prerogative. But it's like there's this disconnect, like I said, there's this disconnect, and if they don't want to listen, that's fine, but it doesn't mean that we have to agree with them and do what they
100%.
say.
Right.
Because I guess what really bothered me was the power differential. It's like, the rest of you need to be quiet. This is how things are going to go. You have to sign this liability form that is super scary and not normal. You know, so
Right. Well,
yeah,
and I,
so
I
I
know
guess
for a fact that,
that's what
yeah, that
my
is
what my thing was I felt like I needed to advocate for some, common sense here, right?
right.
Yeah.
Well, and it should be okay. Like if they were like, let's take the Miriam thing for example. Um, Miriam is perfectly valid to express her reality, and the amount of emotion that took, and the like her to be able to like confront that and do it. I know for a
Mhm.
fact that like she had to muster up probably all the strength she had to do that. Um,
Yeah.
and for all Mike Rinder had to do was acknowledge that. Oh my God. for you to I am so like thank you for mustering up the strength. I don't know that I can help you,
Yeah.
but I see you. I
Compassion and
see that your
understanding.
growth
Yes.
is amazing because
Yeah.
you weren't able to do that. You were treated you were made to pour your heart out on a show for hours. Hours, probably 16 hours of filming that got condensed into like 30 to 40 minutes. Right or wrong, indifferent, it doesn't matter. What matters is the people that were there that put themselves in authority and put themselves as these gatekeepers or
Mhm.
caretakers to say, I see you. I know this is hard. Can I sit with you for a while? And that's it. They don't have to say anything. They don't have to make, oh, your story is beyond track. You could take the entire cult down. Really? Like, that's hyperbole. It doesn't, oh, you're trying to inflate somebody up that's doing the most terrifying thing of their life. No, they just need to have space held for them. They just need to be
Mhm.
acknowledged instead of used as a prop or used to make money herself. She didn't get anything for that. She put her life on the line to her. We
Yeah.
all did. I did the fair game thing. I was approached for the aftermath. It was terrifying. I talked to producers for hours, told them crap like this kind of stuff. But all the yucky stuff. They don't want to know about all this part, the healing. They wanted
Right.
to know about what is the worst trauma and da da da. That's and we're all sitting there being like, yeah, here's what happened, da da da, because you're thinking you're gonna help, and but instead you kind of get triggered, and then it's like, all right, fuck off.
Yeah, and then you
I'm not
didn't
gonna
even
answer you, and it's one for one. It's happened. And I'm not. Is there an advantage to have? Yes, millions of people. We probably wouldn't be here if the aftermath series hadn't happened. Are there always going to be a few broken eggs as the story? Yeah, of course. But do we have to say, oh, stupid broken eggs, you deserved it? Or can we say, whoa, 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 I'm
yeah.
sorry that happened. You feel marginalized? I apologize. I don't have to be responsible and cave myself in and like go beat myself up about it. I can just hold space for that person because it's not me. This doesn't affect my emotions. This is somebody coming to me saying, did you know what happened? I'm stuck in this trauma and I can't get out. I hear you, Marilyn. I'm here for you, Marilyn. Other people aren't. And it's same with Mike Brown. Same with it brings up a lot of those things of like, it's not okay. It's not okay to take people. It made me not want to speak out. It made me want to hide in the chat. And it made me, I still feel
Mhm.
like I wanted to do stuff and contribute, but it made me not want to be right here, right now and speak my truth because I'm going to get shunned. I'm going to get treated. I'm going to get labeled. I'm going to get judged. I'm going to have people that I look up to that I really care about never talk to me anymore.
I don't
I didn't even realize it was doing that. Yeah, thumbs up. But so it's to not be cognizant of that space that's being created by basically, I know I'm alluding to a lot of things and I'm trying not to get into specific
yeah,
topics and subjects, but
that's okay.
um I think everybody knows what we're all kind of talking about. And I still I love the fact that people think there is a route to um a united kind of front or to like it's the old adage of like let's agree to disagree. Why is that so hard? Why is it so hard for you? Why do you have to be cold hard steel? That's RTC. That's not Claire Headley, right? Like
Yeah.
don't I get those are, or be vulnerable and say, "Hey, I don't know how to do this any different." When I get triggered, I turn into cold hard steel
Yeah.
and I push people away. You know what? I can relate to that. I've done that my whole life.
Yeah.
I have.
Yeah.
And I can relate to that. That I can embrace. The rest of it
Yeah.
is hurt. It's painful and I guess it's our responsibility if other people don't realize that they're triggering us, we have to be responsible and protect ourselves. And that's hard. It's hard for me. I want to put myself out there and I'll give until I have no cup left and you can have my cup, so you can fill up. And I realize that I can't do that. I have to fill my
No.
cup up and I'm going to fill it up so full that it overflows every day. And everybody, I want everybody to have that because I'm going to do everything I can to keep my cup overflowing. And that's how we kind of combat this. So
Right.
it's hard to hold. I don't like personally the way I've been treated. And I personally don't like the way I see other people and I perceive the way other people have been treated. And it's really hard to find acceptance in that, to be honest. It really
Mhm.
is. So, I'm trying. I really am. But I mean, how many times do you text somebody and then you realize that they're not going to text you back or they've just left just, like, I don't
It's
know.
heartbreaking. You wonder if they feel that loss and that hurt, like you do, and I think
Right.
they probably do, but I
Yeah.
just wanted to put this up. This is Sophia. "Vulnerability opens lines of communication. Hiding in your corner, growling ends communication."
Right.
And it's really sad, but
It's
it is
because,
true.
and I totally agree because when you're in your corner and you will only communicate from your corner, you have the most to lose. That's where all your stuff is.
Mhm.
So if I'm like, Marilyn, the only place you can communicate with me is in my space. If you do anything, well, one, I'm going to be on edge because it's my space,
Right.
and you're going to come into my space, and I'm going to be like, holy shit, like, well, okay, are you cool? And so I'm going to be a little, and then you're going to feel that defensiveness, and then I'm creating conflict in my safe space.
Mhm.
Like this is what I tell my younger son about, even with the whole school thing, was like, that's your safe space. We keep that safe. You
Yes.
interact in this neutral space and we all leave our corners. And then we all have something to lose and we also all have something to gain. And that's how we
Mhm.
compromise. And then we can find things that we can compromise about. And if we feel overwhelmed, guess what? We can go to our safe space in our corner. And we don't have to invite you can only talk to me from my place where I'm vulnerable and you better, like
Right.
you and
Yeah,
it,
that's what one thing I keep saying is, like, isn't there just, like, an olive branch in this? Like,
mm,
guys, like, yeah, I feel anything, like, just a little bit of vulnerability, a little bit of compassion, empathy, something, anything, and just not just shutting this off saying, "I love you," and then just closing the door completely. It's just
well,
so
and those
sad.
aren't those the signs that we look for? Like when somebody's guarded, like if you're like, "Hey, how's it going?" and the guy's like, "Screw off." Like you're not going to be like, "Oh, hey man, what's up?" It's like, and if it's your friend, you're going to be like, "Hey, are you okay?"
Yeah,
Right?
right,
Like that
yeah,
it's not just this. I don't know, you have to, those are the signs. Vulnerability, compassion. If you can show vulnerability, genuine. Yeah, and that's part of that triangle is like you have to be genuine. You
mhm,
can't just show vulnerability because that's what people expect. Oh, okay. Well, I'm doing this cult thing, so okay, guys, are you ready for my story? So bad. It's like, don't play the part, be the part. If you
mhm,
lived it, when you feel comfortable and people can make that space for you, be that. Don't do what you think people want to hear in order to fake that whole thing. So I think we look for that vulnerability as a sign of like, oh, this person's actually healing. If they're like, if like, even with the Matt Pesh thing, and Matt Pesh is
mhm.
I knew him 20 something years ago in the Sea Org. So since then, have we reached out? No, no, no reciprocity. No, this space is an interesting space from an X point of view. Is it makes you want to almost play that like status game, where it's like these people are playing, well, we're in base people. Well, I was CST. You guys call me sir. Like what's so, and now where are we? So I was above
Yeah,
all you guys. I mean, we weren't on management. We
yeah,
were completely different, but
well,
like we were superior and senior. So now do
mhm,
you now automatically all give me fuck no, they don't give me respect. Not even as a human. So why would, it's like that's just a defense mechanism. And that's a sign that they're not healing,
yeah,
right? That's a sign that they're
right,
not there. And the signs that they are our vulnerability, where they can be like, "Oh my
Mhm.
God, what you said about this, that remind," and you can relate, and you start doing these things that lead to understanding instead of just barking and being defensive. So, yeah, exactly. Sometimes, and
So, yeah,
that's hard. That's hard. I hate that part of healing.
I know.
I
It's
really, because I so
yeah, it
want
really
to
is
have those people. I
sad.
want to have this
Mm,
idea in my head of camaraderie, of understanding, of like, we have these shared experiences. I care about you. I love you. Like, we have, I love you, Marilyn. Like, you have a shared experience, and that's valid.
yeah,
It's not, never ends. I don't really like any of those labels. I get it because we have to differentiate. But when it comes down to it, you have shared experiences. To me, that makes you part of, I understand. And there's not a lot of us trying to live through those shared experiences because they suck.
yeah,
And it's easier sometimes to just say, screw it. I'm fine. What do you mean? And you're not. And it's obvious because I'm not fine. So it's like we're not always fine. That's part of why we're trying to heal. We wouldn't be on a healing journey if we were all fine, right? So,
exactly. And so many quote never ends in the chat and in this space. They can relate.
heck
They
yeah.
have that shared experience as far as, like, who hasn't had some trauma? I mean, how can you go through this life without any trauma, you know? So,
Right.
I feel like there's
Right.
so many levels of it, but I don't compare, and I don't look at myself as like, well, I am a cult, survivor, but I'm no worse or better than anybody else. Like, you know, sometimes, like Nora said, sometimes she feels like people are looking at her like she's, an animal in the zoo or something,
Right.
And
Right.
yeah, we're just human. Like, we're just people. We have YouTube channels. We're just sharing with people, but it's like, I'm gonna get up and go let the dogs out to go pee outside. You know what I mean? It's
Right.
like we
Well, no,
put
we're all,
we put our
and that's
yeah,
why
we're just normal. We just do normal stuff, and
I
we're all,
I thought,
healing
and
together.
that's why I like speaking to people. Like, I would love to almost do this with everybody that's in the chat, because it is relevant. I'm not anything more or extra. I have this experience, and all it can do is either it makes me cold and hard, or it makes me so that I can relate.
Mhm.
If I can relate to really ugly stuff, if somebody comes and says, I hate it when they put the chocolate on the whipped cream on my mocha, and they're really upset and crying, who am I to say that doesn't bother them? Who do I,
Yeah,
maybe they'll
yeah,
go home and beat their dog. Like, it's not, but if I can sit there and relate to them and say, totally, I feel that. I understand what you're saying. And I can, from my place of
I don't
healing,
have that.
right? Um, can be like, I can feel those feelings because I felt them, and I know what that
Mhm,
struggle is like. And to even, and it, using a silly excuse, but at the same time, maybe it's not for some people. There could be a few people out there that's just that's it. And maybe it's a reflection of whatever's
mhm,
happened in their life, but who am I to say that? I got to meet them where they are at in their life at
mhm,
that time, and try to lead with acceptance and try to find understanding. And if they're
mhm.
toxic, then yeah, I have to set healthy boundaries, and distance is an unfortunate option. And
Yeah,
it is what it is, I guess.
absolutely. While you're talking, I was thinking about, the thing I love most about this space are the connections, right? And often, my solo lives are pretty much me talking for a few minutes about something
Mhm.
I'm musing about, right? Because it's morning musing. So, yesterday I did something on resilience, and
Right.
then the rest of it is just interacting with the people, and I love it. I love it. And they've been sending me pictures of their fur babies, of
Right. Right.
craft
That's cool.
projects. Someone sent me a picture of a mountain, like just things, and we're just sharing each other's lives in this space, and I've learned a lot from the people in this space, even, from the chat. And there's like a cruise coming up and stuff I'm really excited about. I mean, there's just all the connections, and that I think that is part of the healing. And I was gonna just suggest to you, because like it's killing me not to be able to, like, pop up everybody's stuff,
Yeah.
but
No, I'm
I
totally,
would
yeah.
love to I would love to see you do some of those lives where it's just you and we can ask you questions and talk to you because
I
I think
and
you'd be so good for that. What do you think,
maybe
guys?
I would. I have a lot of trepidation about that. About I feel like
Right,
I'm talking to myself. So I'm still not. I think I'm still getting used
right,
to this platform, and it's a learning process, and I'm okay with, taking it as I can. Um, but I think once I get over that, because right now I have this in my head that this is the kind of how I see this platform is like a good, and I really appreciate this us talking because I think um that's where you really, if you're able just to both be vulnerable and open, you're able to have good conversations. There's no negativity or hate that I'm trying to put towards anyone.
mhm,
I would like, I maybe not anymore, but I've had a very decent, okay communication with Mike Rinder over the years. Is he dismissive? Is he too busy for, yeah, yeah. Does that suck kind of? Yeah. But at the same time, if you lead with that acceptance, like I think I bring it back to like my father. It is I never want to fully slam the door shut because I think that would be very, very disingenuous of me. Is
mhm.
I always want a path back if I choose to take it. And so I always want to make sure that I offer or try to make that available to anyone that is in that I know. And so to write somebody off completely
Yeah,
is I know what that's like. It's really awful. It's
yeah,
really awful to live and feel and to shoulder that. So I try to really never shut the door completely. And I might close it, but leave it unlocked. So you actually have to open it
mhm,
to get in. But I would rather leave a crack so you can just push it open and come in when you feel like you're able. And that's hard. It's hard to do
yeah,
that. I don't, it's the story of what like love. If you love something, let it go. And if it's, that kind of, I don't
mhm.
think we have to do that. You don't have to let go of something you love. You can accept them for who they are as long as they're not being destructive.
Well,
So
you're a better
it's
person than
fun.
me. I'm just saying because I'm still kind of pissed, my business is still
Yeah, no,
kind of
and it's
burning
valid.
because
It
reading
is
that letter
valid.
to Kelly, I was just like, "Are you fucking kidding me?" So it is very hard not to want to slam the door shut, but
Right.
why are we here talking about this? Because we want to have a solution. We're offering some suggestions. If they don't take them, that's fine. But at some point, something's got to give because again, you got a public
I
charity
just thought I
with
was
your
here to talk about my life. I'm just kidding.
I
Um,
we squeezed it out of you, sorry.
right, right.
But
No,
I'm just saying I love your attitude, and I wish I was more, understanding and just able to not let it make me mad,
well, and
'cause it really does.
yeah,
And it's
I
more it's more seeing you all go through that what you're going through, like having the survivors be mistreated. That's kind of how I feel, you know,
mhm.
and just saying, hey, that's not okay. And if they want to double, triple, quadruple, whatever down, they can. But the community gave those resources to help
Mm, right.
all of you, and that's the thing that burn my
And to be
biscuits,
honest, like I I would I would never ask for help from the aftermath ever. I don't know if it's a pride thing. I know I've helped a lot of people um recently get help, and I saw how hard it was. And to me that um it shouldn't be that. It should be a
Yeah.
process that is just easy. It almost should be like they should be second guessing and being like, "Hey, I get it. I know how hard it is." Or even I didn't maybe have as hard of a landing, but I see that you are and I want to help you. And not make it this where you have to reach, you have to sign non-disclosure, you have to do all these things that takes that trauma and just puts it on steroids. It becomes this like, oh my God, if I screw up, they're going to take everything that I barely could muster
Yeah.
my whole being to ask for. Like it would be, I'm not willing
Yeah.
to put myself in that position, to be
Well,
honest
and
with
the
you.
community members
Uh,
gave the funds with no strings attached, and now they're attaching strings to it in order
right.
to, dispense it, and
Well,
it's
just
just
because they're
that's
in
not
they're
okay.
in defense mode. They're trying to
Mhm.
cover their asses, and they're trying to solve it in with very analytically instead of through their heart. If they at for a minute sat with their hearts, they wouldn't do this. Right, re-traumatizing. Exactly. They wouldn't re-traumatize victims.
Yeah.
The fact that they're victims themselves is irrelevant. You're not, or a survivor, or it's they're not in that
I think it's even
position.
more
And
reason
that's
for them to understand, honestly. I think
well,
there
and
should be
honestly,
even more reason.
what I think the solution is, and I'm pretty sure it's in the works, is to outcreate it. And to be like, okay, you want to do it this way? Well, we'll do another one,
Yep,
and we're not going to do it that way.
yep, yeah,
We will be advocates. We will
mhm,
advocate for these people, because as survivors, we understand, and we're going to lead with empathy, and we're going to lead with compassion, and we're going to demand that they get acknowledged. And if it's hard for them, you know what? We'll sit with you as long as it takes.
yeah,
You
I
know,
said this the other day, I said,
it's
I was talking about, like, a new day, right? And it's like, "Okay, I've said all I can say. I feel like I want to shift my focus to other, charities that will be made,
right. Make it
that are
bigger and
coming up."
better. Like, you
Yeah,
want to
and
play your small game? Well, guess what?
be
We'll make this big,
positive.
huge game,
Mhm,
and
mhm,
that's fine. Play your small, and when you want to play this other game, the door's open
yep,
or it's unlocked.
yep,
So come around when you want. I get it. I've been that guy sometimes where I get butthurt, and I don't like, I feel like I got to pout, and it's valid. I can't do anything else. But eventually I either got to come out of my corner and stop sulking and admit that I was kind of maybe being a lot, and own up to my stuff.
yeah,
And I do hope that, cuz when and if that happens, I will definitely be there to welcome them and shake their hands and
mhm,
accept who they are. But until then, it's hard. It's a shame that this environment has been put into this, and blaming OSA, blaming Scientology, that just
yeah,
plays into their hand. It makes them not have to do the work. What we need
right,
to do is make them do the work, because that if they do, and then they will be easy to spot. Instead, we have survivors using OSA as an umbrella against other survivors, and it's not okay. It isn't. Um, and to be honest, OSA isn't. Um, when we were in, OSA was never the one you worried about. They're external facing. OSA didn't run around the orgs infiltrating people and doing it. They were only external facing. You didn't. If you knew somebody in OSA, that was about all you knew. Um, but the internal facing arm was the ethics and the communications office, and
mhm,
that was the one that went around and policed people and assigned conditions and got all that, did the ethics and justice in Scientology. And that's kind of what's happening now, is people are like, this is the way it's done. If it's not this way, then you're against us. And
yeah, yeah, the
they're
all or
doing that
nothing, us
job
against
for
them.
them.
Yeah,
Right.
mhm,
They're handling situations for them instead of saying, hey, yep, are we fallible? Hell yeah, we all are. Will we say stupid shit? Will we make mistakes? Absolutely. But as long as we don't
mhm,
take each other and ourselves too seriously, we can find that common ground and find that compromise.
yeah,
So I do hope that this community, um, well, and it's not even like, honestly, this whole idea of it being an organized thing, it's not. Do I agree with Aaron all the time? No. Do I talk to him? Yeah. Do I agree with Mike all the time? No. Do I talk to him? Not very often. I used to talk with Claire quite a bit. Did we all agree? No. But that's supposed to be okay. It's not this
yeah,
lockstep.
exactly,
That's what we
mhm,
came from.
Mhm.
Is this cult where we
Yeah.
had no choice? We all agreed if it's
Yeah.
not written, where's that written? Is that source? Like that's all we cared about was that. And
Mhm.
now it's like we are allowed to have our own individual opinions and we're allowed to have
Mhm.
our own way we look at things. Um so it's I do want to see a reconciliation. I do want to see cuz I know that they're putting themselves out in a place where what if they do reach? How many people are going to trust them right away? And I mean on a personal level, not on this
Right.
superficial aftermath level. I mean like what if one day Mark wakes up and is like, wow, it wasn't just me wanting three hots in a cot. I actually was indoctrinated. This actually was like in cult indoctrination. I feel shitty. A lot of people are going to be like, I don't know, Mark. Like, you kind of like it's going to be hard because once bitten, twice shy, and especially with survivors, trust is hard. It's hard not to put your trauma. I know. I believe and I want to trust. And it's so hard when it actually starts happening. I want to find reasons. I look, I'm like, oh wait, that's an output. What's happening there? Like maybe they're being this way. And it's like shit, just
Right.
trust. And but
Yeah.
you have so much to lose at that point that maybe this last trust is it. Maybe I don't have any more.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm not able to trust after that, you know? What
Yeah,
if
I
that
keep
happens?
thinking
Then
of
I
our
lose it
like
all.
yeah, I keep thinking of your children and my children, the behaviors that we're modeling for them, what we're allowing, in our own lives, how we're allowing others to treat us, how we're, you know, even I was thinking about the Aftermath Foundation itself. You said you wouldn't you wouldn't accept help for yourself from them, but what about your children? I think that they would qualify and they should qualify for like,
It would
scholarships or some kinda help, you
it
know?
would be hard because I think even asking would be really difficult, and even the prospect of being denied would be I like I said, I know how to set healthy boundaries for myself, and I'm not gonna put myself through that. I just I won't. I won't. I don't even think I would ever try to ask. Like I asked,
Yeah,
um, Aaron helped me out. Aaron is I don't care what people say, Aaron's a genuine dude.
yeah,
Is he amazing? Is he like perfect? No, he's a little egocentric, absolutely. But aren't we all? Like, aren't we? Don't we all have self preservation as a first thing? Sure. But I
yeah,
will tell you that when I first realized that I was with a daughter of a narcissistic person and there was no chance of it changing, Aaron helped me out. And he didn't make it awkward. He helped me out. And it wasn't a ton of money, it was a little bit. Um, but the sentiment and the meaning and the fact that he's like, I don't need you to pay me back. I don't need you um to do any of that. It's hard to accept help like just unconditionally because I feel out
mhm,
exchange and I feel like I should do more. But Aaron is Aaron's Aaron, and you either accept him for who he is or you, I guess, devalue him and you look at him as a threat. And I don't
mhm,
look at him like that. I look at Aaron as a brother.
mhm,
And brothers don't always love each other. They don't always agree, but I would give my life for a lot of these people. Willingly. So, almost all the second gens and without question. And a lot of these other people as well. I would go through a lot for them without even a second thought. Um, so it's hard. It's
right,
hard to
yeah,
hear people getting attacked and, using their personal differences. It's not, but does it make me want to center myself in that? Not really. Like, I don't want to, will I defend? Absolutely. And I think that's what is, what we kind of are doing here is we're like, if we speak our truth, authentically, well, go ahead and attack. Like,
mhm,
that's fine. You can attack me. I'm totally okay with that. And I'll try to hold space for you because I realize it's coming from your trauma that you're not really willing or able to look at. I will only take so much because I can't take a ton, but I will take it as much as I can, absolutely. In hopes that you'll see that I'm not your target. And that nobody's your target. You have to come to peace with you. And I want to see that happen. Um, so it's hard. It's a hard, it's hard to hold space for somebody who doesn't want to have their space. Like to, they're like, get the fuck away
Yeah,
from me. And you're like, no, I'm going to hang out and just be silent and
right,
listen for you,
right.
you know? So,
Yeah. Well,
um, yeah, there you
thank
go.
you. I mean, I know that you're that type of person. I just have that, the feeling, and I think I'm a pretty good judge of that. And so many people have said, "Dylan, blow Joe, he's such a nice guy. He's so sweet." Because you really put that out there, that you have the good energy, and I tell you, you calmed me down because, like, I tell you, my biscuits have been burning because I see you many of
Right.
you being mistreated, and it really pisses me off. But when I step back and I look at it and I say, "Okay, this isn't necessarily my battle." And if you guys are the ones that are being mistreated, and you can have some compassion and some, empathy and all that, so can I. And
Right.
I have gotten to the point where it's like, well, let the chips fall where they may. People make their own decisions, and like you said, I want to look towards the future. If we can't quote fix this, if there's really right now no resolution and things just have time will tell, right? Then we can look to a new beginning as
Right.
far as helping the survivors. And I know there's a lot of people that are waiting to support and donate and be there for new foundations and charities to help the people that need help. So yeah.
Well, and that's what's being lost in all this is like, um, not, not that any of the people that are out, not that they don't matter, but we're all dealing with our trauma. Like that's, Surge is, I remember being where Surge was. I totally do. I can relate and I have empathy for that.
Mhm.
And I don't judge him. Is he like, do I need to take a break sometimes? Yeah. After talking to him, because it's so much emotion that I internalize. It's so
Yeah.
much it's so heavy. And
Oh yeah, I can go through a whole
I
box of
want to
Kleenex
take,
on one of his
right,
screens.
right.
Yeah.
Um, and I want to take I want him to get that out. Because that's how you heal is if you internalize that and shoulder it, man, it is so dangerous. So yeah, I don't know. It's
Yeah, everybody has their own way, and I tell you, I would be really pissed off if I were him too. So, he has a right.
no,
Yeah, I hold space for that. I
right.
make allowances for it. It's, everybody has their own way of expressing, how they feel, and I've just seen it so recently with all the different, we're gonna call them ex-Scientologists, creators, second gens, whatever. They are starting to really ask questions, feel how they feel, express how they feel, for better or worse, however anybody agrees, that's okay. Yes, he's intense. He is very intense, and it is justified. So,
Well, I'm
but
glad he has the space
yeah,
to do that because
yeah,
I went
exactly.
through that
Yeah.
um with my family and it wasn't received well. So I'm glad that
Mhm.
he has the space to get through. I admire and honor that because if I would have had that space, I can see his healing journey, and and it's amazing, and I love it, and I support it. Um, so it's nice to have that, and that's what this is should be about. Is that people,
Mhm.
if you're willing to express yourself, well, I'm willing to be here and support you 100%. Whether you were in Scientology, I just have the fact that I grew up that way. You know, I
Mhm.
I I understand and respect everybody's or try to understand and meet them for their trauma and where it's at. If you're at a point where you can express what happened to you, well then I'm going to try to be here and hold space for you because that's part of the healing journey. And that's all I would have ever wanted, was and there were times, where you'd meet a random stranger and that day I got off the train and I wasn't going to get off the train. And those are things that they mean a lot. And all these people, they have a lot of trauma and I want them all to live and flourish. And I don't know how that looks and what that looks like right now, to be honest with you. because there is so much trauma that's being thrown around,
Yeah.
and so I think I just hope I want to keep putting that out there because otherwise, that's how we postulate. If we postulate good and we postulate what we want to see, that might help it come to fruition. So that is my Christmas wish, is I hope that we all heal and show vulnerability and lead with understanding and try to accept each other, you know. And I know it's not perfect, but that's what healthy boundaries are for. So we can't, we just use those. So,
Absolutely. Well, there's so many. We're over 2 hours. I mean, it just flew by.
I
I
know, right?
I could talk to you all day, and there's so many comments and questions we didn't get to. I apologize, but you can leave some comments in the comment section under the videos, and go to @blowdrill if you haven't subscribed. What are you waiting for, guys? So it's
Yeah,
just
I'm doing it organic, so
@blowdrill.
only do it if you
Yeah.
want.
Okay.
I don't want.
Consensually,
um,
consensually subscribe.
that's
Yeah,
right, right,
absolutely.
right.
Yeah.
Consensual subscription.
Yes. Yes.
um,
So what are you planning on doing a little more with your channel soon?
yeah,
Now
no,
that
I
we're
am.
now that we
I
want more, you're
right,
gonna
and
leave us
no, I
wanting more?
think I do have a lot to say. I'm not.
Yeah.
I've gotten caught up in the semantics of it, of like, where do you start? How do you even begin to have a conversation like that? And that's why I think for me, it's probably um, a crutch I'm looking for, of like, well, if I have somebody else to talk to, it'll make it that way. It's a
You
be
can always talk
easier,
to me. You can always
so
talk to me.
no,
I
absolutely, absolutely.
promise.
And I think that this is what's needed. We need to kind of talk a lot through healing, and if our stories come up and that's appropriate, then I think
Yeah.
that sharing is the right thing to do. But
Yeah.
unless we talk about, like, I can go back and talk about everything that I did in the Sea Org all the time, and it's pretty interesting. Um, but it's that healing afterwards. Like, how has that either positively or negatively shaped us? And I know for me, it's both. There's some negative stuff that it's hard to see those triggers, and it's hard to um like sidestep them, right? Usually when you see them, you're either in the middle of it and you're like, God, this is the thing I don't want to have happen anymore. And here I am being reactive, or or running away, or those kind of, because I'm terrified of trust. And
Mm.
I think we need to start, as much as we're able to or can feel comfortable with. I think we should talk about those conversations. How, this is, to me, this is more of an erosion of trust, and speaks to a lot of the people that are still attacking. It speaks to their trauma more than my need to internalize their actions and judgments towards a group that I identify and love. And it's hard to meet at that level, because you do want to react, and you want to say, fuck, Mike Rinder, what the fuck? Why didn't you just be like humble? Why don't you just
Yeah.
relate to these people? And then you have people that are flying monkeys that are like, well, Mike Rinder was always a boss, so you know he can't do that. It's like, no, 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 that's not how healing works. That's how denial works. That's how deflection. That's how lack of accountability works.
Hmm.
Is I'll always be the person that I was, and I can never change it. So you just have to respect me. Like, no, we don't play by your rules. We play by the rules, and that means that we all have input.
Hmm.
And that's all I want to see, because I think that would be healing for him, at the risk of being, you know, presumptuous or judgmental. Is, I think that that would be healing for him. And I think a lot of people, it's the fear of, he's terrified that maybe that vulnerability would lead to what he's most afraid of, which is probably being alone and being shunned. And
Yeah.
you realize that people can relate if you actually try to be who you are. Then you're gonna find your people. And
Hmm.
that's, there's nothing wrong with that. So either way.
I really like this comment from Philosophy. Hey there. I don't know if Mark or Claire came forward and spoke from their heart. I think there would be forgiveness. Yeah. And
Mm, I
my
agree.
Mike too, kind of what you were just saying is that I think that they do have a fear of being shunned and not, being vulnerable, but it's kind of happening by their own hands. They're
Right. Well,
double and tripling down and losing a lot of support. And they all they had to do, like even that day, it took 3 months for Mike to issue that sort of apology, in between all of the other
well,
insults and
not.
that agent stuff.
We
And
should
it was like,
definitely talk
yeah,
about that at some point because that wasn't an apology. That was, if you read that letter with that Mike wrote or the blog thing, it was him speaking on behalf of the aftermath about all the judgmental and slightness. And then when he apologized, he only apologized for himself, not the rest of the people. And then he continued on to speak about on behalf of the aftermath. And
yeah,
it just shows that, and it's not even a judgment. Like, sure, we could get angry and be like, "What a piece of shit! Why did?" But at the same time, it's like, look, you haven't accepted that you've bypassed healing and introspection, and you've turned into this hero and saint of I know everything that happened, so I'll just help you people. Like, we don't put people in a traumatic situation and then not relate to them. That's
right,
that's
yeah.
dangerous. It's
And it's fine
dangerous.
if
That's
he's
what it is.
representing himself and his own opinions, that's one thing. But if you're
Sure.
representing, again, here I am on my soapbox again, a public charity
Right.
with
Well, and
and I'm
that's yeah.
laughing because I'm blue in the face, right? I'm laughing because I've just been beating this drum for so many weeks, but and then, not to open a big can of worms, I think we need to kind of wrap this up soon, but the Matt Pesh thing, the letter. If anyone hasn't seen it, hop on over to Kelly Copter's channel and her community page. And her answer, I had to read it really quickly before we went on, but it's just beautiful. People were saying she's the adult in the room. She's the adult in the room.
She
And in
well,
some
and
cases, she's half their age.
it
And
probably
he was
shouldn't.
he was offering her a position on the aftermath
Right.
board. Is there
Which
a
had to
vote?
be
Like,
facetious. That had to
I
be
know,
like
but
sort of
I know,
a,
but it's just he
no, it's a
again, though, he was
it's not a
talking
good
for the
look.
aftermath. Yeah,
It
no.
kind of boils down to when
Where does
you
that come from?
it's okay if we're in a normal world and everybody's like doing or not doing their thing, but when you now go into this environment where you are expecting other people to be vulnerable and to pour out their hearts and to put themselves in a compromising position living wise, but you can't put that in yourself. It's a really it's almost like a way. It's like people that it's a supply. You're living vicariously through other people that are willing to be vulnerable about their trauma, but you're staying guarded and giving this idea that, oh yeah, me too. Well, that's not how that works. You're not a me too person. You're a here's my story. Thank you for sharing your vulnerability. I'm only asking you because I'm leading the way by example. And that's what's missing from this. Because you start a foundation and because you have people on that are willing to be vulnerable and share their experience doesn't give you a pass. Like, if you're going to be on a healing journey or you're going to acknowledge your trauma, that requires vulnerability. That requires
Mhm.
taking those leaps of faith and saying, people might hate me, but I have to be true to me because that's what I experienced. And I don't see that, unfortunately. And I really, like I say, and if any of those see that, I'm here. I will hold space for you to go through that. And whatever the beginning of that journey looks like, there's no wrong way to start it. It's just accepting that you've had these things happen to you and you see it every day because there's all these people sharing it. There's all these people that were never in Scientology sharing it. Um, During COVID, there was an audio app that started, and um, a lot of us ex Scientologists got on there, and but a lot of Jehovah Witnesses did, and a lot of Mormons, and a lot of Quiverin, and a lot of these
Mhm.
high demand religious organizations, and we all found a common space. Not because we were trying to like one up, it's because we were being vulnerable. And one person said, "Here's what happened to me," and another person was like, "Oh my God, that's really similar to what happened to me with Jehovah Witness. And then the more we're like, yeah, and that this is what we called it. And now we are starting this social group where we're all able to share our vulnerabilities and we don't get used, we don't get exploited. We're just there and it's a healing. That's where that healing idea comes in. And that's
Mhm.
not what,
Yeah.
you know, they're using it like, oh good, they'll be vulnerable. I don't have to be that. I'm in this position to where I can puppet string it a little bit and but be like, oh yeah, me too. That's yeah, I did that too. Yeah. And it's just odd. And so yeah, do better, be better, right? Like that's kind of
Mhm.
what it is. So
Well,
either way,
thank you
I feel
so
like I've
much
said the
for
same
your.
thing like 8 times.
That's okay. No, it's good to drive it home. I mean,
Right, right.
I can hear it. I
I
need
have
to hear
about
it.
8 more times in me, so we need to
Anytime,
right.
anytime. Well, this has been great. You welcome back anytime. Everyone's saying they really want to hear more from you. I'm
Yeah,
so
I'll do
glad
more.
to have you.
Build I have my own business kind of. It's not really a huge, it's very small. But I build log cabins, so I kind of stay a little bit busy, or I try to stay busy, distract myself. Um, and I'm a full-time single parent. So I come and sit here and I'm like, I need to do something. And I'm just like, oh, but I don't know. What do I do? So I will get over that and just try to start blathering
You have so
to,
much to
to
offer.
my video.
Yeah,
Mon-
I'm here for it. Yeah, let's do it. I want to hear like
I
just
appreciate that. Thank you.
I just get on there and I'm like, "Hi, everybody," and I just kinda look at the little pictures and
Right. No, and I
you get to
envy
know
that. I
people. Yeah, you get to know
respect,
people.
like, that takes a lot of confront, and it's honestly scary to me sometimes because I don't know. And sometimes I feel like if I go too deep, I don't know that I can dig myself out, like cuz
I
it
hear you.
ugly cries are ugly, like no matter how you look. And so I think
I'm
that's part of
laughing
my
because,
right.
I'm
No,
sure
I
you've
that's why I
seen me
say
ugly
envy it.
cry many
Hey,
times.
I admire that trait. It's a strength that I don't possess quite yet. I I've it's weird when you give yourself the power to kind of protect yourself
Yeah,
or to guard
and that's
yourself in
okay.
light.
That's okay.
It
Yeah,
it manifests itself in interest. I know I feel this urge to want it because I know that's more healing. It just takes a lot. It does take a lot to confront and um but I know I need to do it to keep healing. So it's
just start
I will
small.
get there. It's just yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's kind of I did a bunch of little
Well,
shorts. Like you'll see on my channel, it's really odd. I did a bunch of shorts, and so I've been kind of just gradually leaning into it. And I've forgotten to click on a bunch of the lives. So I really appreciate you setting that up that way because I wouldn't have remembered to click on and I would have done this whole thing and not at all done it on my channel. So I
yeah,
appreciate it.
absolutely. Yeah, I want you to get more content, more
Right?
subscribers. I know you don't wanna be totally, overwhelmed, but you're getting close to 1,000. So, if anybody would like to hop over
Oh
to
yeah, I saw that.
@blowdrill
Okay.
and subscribe, yeah, I'd love to see you get to
Yeah, and
1,000.
look at all my stuff.
Yeah, look at his stuff. Making yourself vulnerable, we love it.
That's right. That's
So,
right.
okay, everybody, thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you, Dylan. This has been
Yeah, thank
great,
you. I
and I
appreciate it.
hope we can
And
talk
chat,
again
I
soon.
thank you very much. I was trying to pay attention to everything and I really appreciate you guys um your chat and dialogue and I definitely want to acknowledge all you guys for being here. I really appreciate it. And I know Marilyn does.
Yes, thank you, everyone. And if you wanna hop over to Dylan's channel and can they leave questions at under the video?
Absolutely.
Like, if they
I
yeah, so
even
you
think
can
I've
comment and
been
question.
adding, yeah, for sure. 100%.
Yeah.
I think that's all set up. I don't know. If it's not, I'll try to figure it out
Yeah. It
and do that.
yeah, I think that you can automatically leave comments unless you shut them off, so
Yeah,
it
I
should
don't
be
think I have
fine.
a community thing because I have to get to a certain amount to have a community. But I'm not positive about all that.
Yeah,
So, um,
it should pop up at some point, so,
right.
alright, everybody, thank you so much, have a
Thanks.
great day, and we'll see you soon, bye.